Should Church of England cathedrals charge people to get in? Local villagers turn on their vicar after a 15th century tower is whitewashed. And 2 in 5 Christians who are brought up in the faith are walking away. This is Rev Dan's Roundup. Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Rev Dan. I'm a vicar in the Church of England. On this channel, I get my new... Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Rev Dan. I'm a vicar in the Church of England. On this channel, I get all my views as a parish priest and all the Christian news happening in the world today. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it, comment down below, and don't forget to hit that notification bell. Well, if you watch my channel regularly, you will know during Lent I'm not doing all the news. I'm doing 3 or 4 stories, but actually today you're going to get 5 because if you know me, you know that I like my history, my archaeology, and they will always slip in. So I got one right at the end for you on with that. You know, an interesting story bit that we will get to when we get there. I hope Lent's going well for you. It's one of my things that I'm doing during Lent is just withdrawing. I'm not coming off. I'm not looking at it. I am looking at social media less, and as I said before, I'm really noticing the difference in it, you know, and I'll probably come out the other side of this period of Lent. The big thing that I learned is, you know, controlling what I see rather than being controlled by what I see. You know, those algorithms are dangerous, and trying to in one way manipulate the algorithms to get the things that you want to see and hear rather than the stuff that they think you want to see just because you click on a certain story. And of course everything's clickbait on the internet, so you're going to click on something on one of the social media sites that you use, or all of them in fact, and then you start seeing more of that. And so it is about control. It's about like going, do I really need to see this? I know it could be clickbait, and you know, I don't need to see that as much. But actually being off it is a good thing. But don't turn off Rev Dan's Roundup on this Friday. And I will get, after this Lent, back to doing a video, usually on Tuesday or Wednesday, looking into stories a bit more deeply and pulling them out rather than just an overview. But as we always do now, we start off our Rev Dan's Roundup with a Bible verse, and this Bible verse, actually, it's going to be coming out tomorrow in my Fulfilling Life daily devotional, which you can subscribe to down below, or the link that's coming up here. Because this week I'm looking at serving and self-sacrifice, and so this really speaks about that. So it's from Acts 9:17. Then Ananias went to the house and entered it, placing his hands on Saul. He said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you were coming here, has sent me so that you may see again and be filled with the Holy Spirit." You know, what's beautiful about that is Ananias, who, when God spoke to him and told him what to do, questioned why. I've heard that this man has been persecuting Christians in Jerusalem, really, and God explained to him, and he went being obedient. And when he got there, those words that he said to Paul, the person he said had been persecuting, you see those words there, brother Saul. You know, those are big words. Remember, Saul had been blinded and they couldn't see anything. He would have heard someone enter into the room, and those first words were brother Saul. You know, we've got to be obedient to God's calling on our lives, even when we might not think it's the right thing to do. God knows. And we see Ananias probably thinking through those things and entered into that room of someone who persecuted his brothers and sisters in Jerusalem, and yet said those words, brother Saul. Something to reflect on. If you want to get into the daily devotional, go subscribe to that channel. I'd say a bit more than I am saying here on that as we travel through Lent. And we get into our news now. The first one is about fees for cathedrals, and there's not much news going on at the moment, but you know, this one was made when it gets into the mainstream papers, you know, you take notice. And this is one. It comes from the Telegraph, and it says exorbitant ticket fees turn England's cathedrals into cash cows. And, it's well, first of all, do you think that cathedrals should be charging people to get into those buildings? As churches, we don't charge people to come into the building. If we got it open in my church, in the summer, we'll have volunteers who will be in the church, allowing people to come in. We're in a very pretty village. We got many people coming in the summer. We got John Milton's cottage just down the road, and people will come to visit that as well. And so we'll get people coming in. We'd never think of people, we're charging people to come in, but they come in quite gladly. But cathedrals, yes, they are expensive to run, but are charging people to get in. And what we want to do is just get people into the building, get into that holy place where worship and prayer has just been said and sung for hundreds and hundreds of years. But admission prices, not only are they charging, they're going up. And so I thought it'd be interesting to look at that. And then just for you guys, got a pretty picture of a cathedral there, just to remind us these are big buildings, a lot bigger than my church for sure, and they're old and they require a lot of maintenance. But one thing that I realise is when I go on holiday, you go around Europe and things, the Catholic cathedrals are always free. You can just walk in and visit, and there's not anything there near the entrance, forcing you, as it were, for a donation. I know they do other things like the candles and, where they charge people money to light the candle. And so that's how they would make their money. But is it right to charge people, even tourists, to go in? Surely we just want people to get into that building and perhaps have an experience with God while they're in that building. But we charge and the price is going up. So in this Telegraph article, it says admission prices at Church of England cathedrals have reached exorbitant levels, with costs surging as much as 24% in the last year. And we know that with inflation and the cost of living and all these things, that the price of running cathedrals will be affected as well. But it's going up. It says fees have spiralled to such a degree that now cost more than £300 for a couple to visit the country's 10 cathedrals, which charge an entry fee. So not all cathedrals, of course, and I should have said that at the start, charge an entry fee, but some of the cathedrals do. Add Westminster Abbey, which is a royal peculiar rather than a cathedral, into the mix, and the combination total nears £400. Critics argue ever increases prices have transformed England's grand places of worship into cash cows. And this is where the difficulty is, because it does cost, as I said, money to run a cathedral. I think, just skipping down the article, it says cathedrals like Canterbury and York Minster cost over £30,000 a day to run, or smaller cathedrals like St Albans around £6,000 a day, and Worcester about £8,000 a day, which is a huge amount of money. It really, really is per day, and 30 grand a day is huge. But and the trouble with Church of England is everything's separated. So cathedrals will operate differently from local parish churches, and where the Church of England has £10 million in assets and reserves, as they say, we don't know, we don't see any of that ourselves, and I'm sure the cathedrals don't as well. But therein lies the problem, isn't it? Should the cathedrals be charging when perhaps the Church of England should be subsidising to allow people to get into those buildings? They have not a quiz, they have a poll. I'm trying to think of the right word. A poll here. A cathedral admission price is too high. Over 10,000 people are voted on it, and 87% say yes. I suppose the other question is, should those cathedrals that be charging an entry price, or should the the Church of England, National Church of England, be subsidising to allow people to go into a place of worship? Because remember, this is a place of worship. Canterbury Cathedral last year had a blanket charge of £17 per adult for visit. However, varying seasonal rates have since been introduced, resulting in a 24% price increase for those visiting on summer weekends. Adults are now charged £21. So, you go from £17 to £21. But if you go on a weekend, it's now increased as well. You'll pay a bit more. That's like that horrible thing with holidays, isn't it? We're looking at summer holidays, and you hit July, you hit the school holiday time, and the prices just go straight up, and you feel so robbed, because if you went in June, it's hundreds and hundreds of pounds cheaper. Again, is it right to do that? They say family entry to St Paul's now commands a hefty £62 price tag, up from just £43.73. No, I can't even say it. £43.70 just 3 years ago. So that's gone up £18, £19. That's a big jump in 3 years, and it will put people off. I'm a vicar of the Church of England, and I get put off going to cathedrals because you don't want to even go up to some cathedrals. So you've got those cathedrals that don't charge, and you don't want to go up because you feel that they might be asking for money. You just don't want to go in and to go away. So it's easier not to go in to see them. I suppose it's easier now to Google, but it does put people off, and a lot of people won't go into the cathedrals if it's too expensive or if they think they charge. But they do cost a lot of money. So I'm not saying here don't charge. There's got to be something that changes to enable cathedrals to allow people to get in there for free. So it's top 10 most expensive cathedrals: St Paul's and York Minster at £26, Oxford Christ Church Cathedral £24, but that also includes access to Oxford Christ Church site, which is part of the university, and Oxford unique in that because it's part of the university. Canterbury Cathedral £21, £19.50 on weekdays, or April to September, and £18 October to March. And then you got Ely Cathedral in Wales £14, and then the rest going down. Exeter Cathedral £10. But those are the 10 most expensive cathedrals, and I just think that we should enable people to get into our churches. Like so many churches have to close their doors now, and the main reason is insurance costs. We can't leave the doors open because you have to pay excess insurance for that, and that's just the way it is. Lots of things get stolen, and so there's a risk if you leave your church open without anybody there. That's why we can only open our church with volunteers there to make sure nothing's stolen. But if you do leave your church open, you also have to take all the nice things out, and that's part of the attraction of the church, seen as it is. But what can be done? That's the question, to enable those. And many people who aren't Christian go into those churches. And as I said before, when you are in a Catholic church or cathedral in Europe, you can just walk straight in, and there's so many people there. And yes, it's a bit of a touristy thing there. Do people experience God? Well, we don't know how God's working in their hearts, but at least they can walk in. And is it now down to the Church of England to say, let's look at how we work our finances to enable people to walk into our cathedrals when visiting a city? And most of them are not going to that place to worship the cathedral. Some will be, but they're doing many other things. But to not go in the cathedral, it would be, because the cost would be a real shame. It would be a real shame to do that. It says latest figures that show that 62% of people who visit cathedrals do not pay or donate to enter, and in 2023 cathedrals welcomed 9.3 million visitors. So yeah, a lot of people won't pay to get in, but that's maybe more thought has to be put into that as well, to help people to think to donate. And I know there's different ways of doing that, but I think at the end of the day, for me, in my humble opinion, it would be best to find a way to help these cathedrals run and for the upkeep of the cathedrals, while enabling people to get into those cathedrals to let God do his thing. Of course, God can do his thing anywhere, but they are, as I said before, holy places. And talk about holy places. This is a difficult story as well, because I can just feel for the vicar going through this. In the Daily Mail, it says, Villagers turn on vicar for turning 15th century church into lighthouse by rendering tower bright white after claiming it would be a soft honey colour. So this is a church in the Yorkshire Dales. It has a 15th century, it is a 15th century church, and it's got a bell tower, which, because of the weather and the water and getting into the stone, will eventually lead to its collapse. So they've had to, and I say this, reapply lime wash, because lime wash was on the bell tower for I think a few hundred years until the Victorians took it off 150 years ago. You look at the pictures, and like I said, the links are down below. No, that's the wrong one. Already jumped onto a where's my thing? I put on my little, what do you call it? So you've seen the next story that's going to come up, but I put them in the wrong order. So Vicar's turn on the tower, and there's the headline, and this is the church before the tower got painted, and this is with the white tower. And of course you can see in that photo, got it right, well done. Everything's backwards to me. So you can see that it's a pretty little village, and you've got the hills behind, and you've got the church in the valley, and then you've got the white tower there. But what's difficult about this, and you see the headlines, and this also was in the Telegraph, so this is again getting into the main news, is the headlines are kind of not, again, as I was going back saying about the social media, the headlines will get you to click on it. Of course, that's what they're there to do, but you really have to read the article. So it's called Ashrig, and it's best known for the quintessentially rural idyllic of Darrowby in the original series of Creatures Great and Small, so it's a known place. But it has now started to look new after the bell tower at Grade 1 listed St Oswald's Church was given a lime wash render to stop water leaking through its ancient brickwork. And so you're just in a nightmare scenario here as the vicar. And it would have been, I think they said, had been talking about this for years and years and years, and something had to be done. So the thing is, and I think that what I'm seeing in this is, the vicar will always get the blame. The vicar is the person leading the church, but the vicar doesn't come in to ministry to deal with whitewash on church towers. They come in for the gospel and the spiritual ministry within their parish, and helping people in their time of need, in their time of joy. And so this poor vicar, who's known as Rev Dave, is now dealing with something that you can't avoid. When in the future your church tower will collapse if you don't do anything about it, you have to take action. And because it's a Grade 1 listed building, you have to know that so many different people and agencies would have been involved in these discussions for sure. You literally cannot hammer a nail into the wall of a Grade 1 listed building without consent from the local diocese, Historic England, and other interested parties, and it takes a long time. So obviously there is a big problem here in the tower, and the only way that they dealt with it is how it was dealt with before, is by lime washing it. And so I think it was done last year. It said it would be a soft honey colour, and in keeping with the newly cleaned masonry on the side of the building. and I think it was painted and it was covered over to keep it safe. And then the scaffolding's coming down, the covers have come off, and people are calling it an abomination, a hideous eyesore as well. And there was someone's tried to stop the rendering through a petition last year as well. But like I said, I feel sorry because they would have had so many people on this and discussing this to keep the church safe, and they're safe there for future generations. And I want to go down to let's pick out some of the comments. Phillips Halton, born and raised in Ashwick, said there was a lot of tradesmen in and around the village who offered all sorts of solutions other than this one, which was by a great distance the worst. It has disfigured the church, changed the face of the village, and it's quite horrendous. Again, so, there's tradesmen with opinion. I don't know who they spoke to, but as he says, tradesmen, there's tradesmen with opinions. Do they have the expertise on this? He said to say that they are disappointed with the vicar and the diocese is an understatement. It's hard to comprehend what has been done. It's a grade 1 listed building in a national park. No one will ever convince me this was an appropriate thing to do. But just trying to find here the part. Well, like I say, it was painted for hundreds of years. It was lime washed for hundreds of years before the Victorians took it off. So there's obviously a problem back then because of this. One thing it does make the church, it does definitely make the church stand out for sure. Rev Dave, as he's known to his flock, is dismayed at the flack flying his way. He said, to hear and to read Dave Clark is a liar is disappointing, and it is actually upsetting. Some of the things written online about me have been very personal, and that's difficult. And that's the thing, it starts getting personal attacks here. However, I have broad shoulders, and I accept that people feel strongly about this issue, and that as the vicar, I am the focal point for that. We are not diminishing anyone's distress over this, but I feel there would have been great distress if the tower had fallen down, or if the bells came loose and fell through the floor. And that's the thing. I remember in our church, not too long after we got here, the fire alarm was going off on a Sunday night all night. And we couldn't turn it off, and it was just, I felt so bad for the people who were living near the church. And the fire alarm's loud, and so I wrote an apology on Facebook the next morning, just really apologising. It couldn't happen at the worst time. I think it started about 11:30 at night. And the people around were saying, we'd rather the fire alarm go off than the church go up in flames, and that they still have a church here. And so there are things that are there to protect the churches, and some people will realise that as well. And if you have to put lime wash on the tower to protect it, then if you don't, it's just going to fall down. It can look pretty, but it will fall down over time. He said, I am sorry if people felt they were left out the loop, but someone had to make a decision, and it certainly was not made in isolation. And as I said before, it's a grade 1 listed building. He's not going to make the decision by himself. There would be so many people involved. This has been a process that has gone on for 10 years and has taken on board the advice and guidance from experts around the world. We have talked to masons, professors, researchers, and had the invaluable help of the Damp Towers Project, which is the longest running architectural preservation project in history. It's been running since 1989 to find solution to problems with towers like ours, which had been ruined by water, and we get a lot of it in the Yorkshire Dales. And so one of the things said it was white. It was absolutely white, and it is slightly off because if you look at the picture on the one of the pictures, it's got that painting around the stone window frame, and that is white, and that's slightly off white. But I suppose if you can't see that, you can't compare. He said, this is the part about how long it was lime washed. It is important to note that the church was rendered for 600 years. It's only the last 115 years that's been without it. The render was removed in the 1850s by the Victorians. It's bound to be a talking point as you drive through the Dale. It's a case of, ta-da, there is the tower. But that's what it was always supposed to do. It says, look, here's the house of God. And absolutely. If you're driving past, you're definitely going to see it. And it's here's the house of God. Those are the right words. Drive down, go in, go pray. You don't go to the cathedral, you might have to pray, but go to their church. You can find it really easily. And again, if they've done lime wash for 600 years because there's a problem that long ago, and they've seen all these experts, and that's what they come up with, and that just is the way it is. So a lot of people, he said, have been involved in this, but it will always come back to the vicar. And I think on things like this, maybe there's a lesson to help protect the vicar, because the vicar's got a parochial ministry as well, and this will do a lot of damage to that parochial ministry, and there's a lot of distrust in him because he is leading the church, but he didn't come to lead the church in deciding what to do with bow towers. You have to deal with that as part of your vicar, but I don't know how much the diocese, you go off these articles, were involved, but maybe trying to take it one person away from him as a lead person for the local parish to speak to, then and making it clear that Rev Dave is here for the spiritual parochial ministry, and because it's such a big thing as well, putting that on somebody else in the diocese head office. You don't call it head office. I get used to calling it head office after working in work, being in a proper job, as I say. But is the diocesan house. But it will split people, and people have lots of opinions. When I first saw it, I thought, whoa, that's a ta-da. But now I understand the story, and I do feel for Rev Dave. Do pray for him. Do pray that his ministry doesn't get too sidetracked because of that, because it's not all about church towers. It's those things which we have to deal with. So moving on, and you saw this before, I'll press it now. Lord Minster Community PCCs look at new models of ministry. So this is in the Diocese of Leicester, and the Diocese of Leicester are moving a lot of the churches into Minster communities, they're called, and this is the first one, and it's 17 parishes in the first Minster community, and the PCCs are considering proposals to meet the cost of its ministry as required by the diocesan framework. The number of stipendiary ministers is to be 1, a revised form of oversight minister, who it is proposed will prioritise work with the church schools in the 4 parishes that have them. So what they're doing is, what they were doing down Truro is to have an oversight minister. And I remember a couple of years ago covering these stories and just thinking they're oversight managers. They really are oversight managers. I couldn't imagine having an oversight for 17 parishes. And you will have limited time, and they're saying prioritising work in schools, which can take a lot of time as well. It's a good ministry. I wouldn't knock schools ministry. It's such a good ministry in 4 parishes, but 4 schools, it can take a lot of time as well, depending on how much you do in the schools. But it takes away from your parochial ministry. You've got your Sunday services. Obviously, you're not going to see a lot of those churches. I can imagine some of the churches are quite small, maybe once a month services anyway. But if you don't go there for 1 month, that means you haven't been there for 2 months. That's a long time. You're going there every other month. And if they do communion, if they're communion services, how are you going to get cover if you haven't got that many ordained clergy? And so, but the other thing is to raise up laity to step up, which again I've got no problem with, because we are the priesthood of all believers. We've all got our callings, but we know that volunteering in churches is going down and has taken a nosedive since COVID, and people are busy. It's not like yesteryear where one person works. Usually it used to be the husband and the wife stayed at home and they got time to help out the local church. Now the wife is working, and some people are working international hours, so they're working when the Far East starts to wake up, and when the States start to wake as well, and working with them. So to then in that small bit of time to help church, which they still do, but they got families as well, is it's a big problem. So how many people will be able to help out at these churches, to help out the oversight minister who will not be seen? And data from the Church of England 10 years ago, well, actually more, it's 2012, I think, evidence to antidote, or antidote to evidence, or something like that. Not antidote, not antidote, antidote. Said that church growth, one church, one minister. That's it. One minister in a church, and you will get church growth, of course, because you can concentrate on that local parish and put all your time there. But the trouble in Leicester is they have a lack of money, and that's forced this way of new thinking. But is it the right way? I've said before, I just don't think I don't think this is going to work. One of the things that when this came out in Leicester and Truro, when they announced what they're going to do and their similar models, is it sounded like an interregnum when you're in between vicars and you get one, so a vicar retires or leaves, and then you get perhaps a year where you haven't got a vicar, and everyone mucks in, and they muck in and they muck in and muck in, and then they appoint a vicar, and the vicar comes, and the first thing they all say, "Oh, great! I'm so glad you're here. We can rest now. It's been so hard for a year to do all this." Now we're just saying it's a continual interregnum that you need to step up for your church, and also you need to find money to pay for your vicar, which across probably 17 parishes could be done, but it depends how big those churches are. So it says Lord Missional Community was the first of 20 to 25 proposed communities. So in the diocese, so there's going to be 25 of these. I don't know how many clergy are going to be in each of these as they're starting. And they're incorporating, so in the deanery, so I wonder if they're doing it by the deaneries, 17 out of 24 are the parishes, so 7 parishes haven't opted in to do it. It says by 2026, all 234 parishes in the diocese are expected to join Minster communities, as part of a reorganisation to address structural deficits and encourage collaboration. And so it comes again down to money, and going back to the cathedrals, well, the Church of England does sit on £10 billion worth of reserves, and I know things are tied up, but they say here the diocese faces significant financial challenges with a structural deficit projected to reach 62 million in 2024, or it has reached it, forecast in 2024. We're in 2025 now, right? Don't know what that's going on about. In Leicester alone, the deficit stood at 2.3 million in 2023, unless they wait for the accounts to be published or something. Parish financial contributions have declined, with given levels in Laund, I think it's Laund or Laund, deanery dropping by a third since pre-COVID levels. Minster communities are expected to fund their own ministry costs, including clergy stipends. So that includes all the house, probably the national insurance, the pension, and all those thrown in as well. So, which is the way a lot of dioceses do now. You need to fund your own minister, and some dioceses will say if you can't fund your own minister, when that minister leaves, you get what you can afford. So if you're going to afford half a stipend, then you only get half-time vicar, which again leads to decline because they're not doing 2-3 days, depending on what the church decide, work. So you lose out on all those contact points and with people because you're not working those days, and it's it just can seem to be going one way. Addressing the diocesan synod last year, the Bishop of Leicester, Martin Snow, suggested that I've got to remember, not missional but Minster communities supporting the cost of their own ministry was the only way we could address our financial deficit while also continue with a bold and audacious plan to work with God in growing the church. It was an important means of incentivizing generosity and empowering local people. So it's what happened in Wigan, and I'll link the video here of what happened in Wigan, where they brought all the churches together in Wigan. They thought that they reduced the clergy. They brought the churches together. They thought the people would step up, and they didn't step up. In fact, they thought that more money would be given, and people withdrew their money. If you lose the vicar, people are not happy, and so they withdrew the vicar. So this could potentially, if they went the same way, be quite disastrous for the Diocese of Leicester. It says, as the number of full-time stipendiary placed in the diocese was expected to fall to 80 by 2026, there were 82 in 2024. The diocese offered the assurance that at a minimum, each Minster community, they keep calling it MC, would have at least one stipendiary cleric, while each church would have a named minister who might be ordained or lay. So they're saying each Minster community would have at least one stipendiary cleric. So I can imagine, and it would be a particular calling to be oversight minister. It really, that's why I say manager, because you are managing all of those. And just think, right, back to the church in the Yorkshire Dales. If you're an oversight minister who has a church with a bell tower has such a problem like that, and it's grade 1 listed, you are going to get caught up in a lot of work if you haven't got the people around you. But what they're saying is, well, we need the people to step up. Well, that will be their choice. And in some churches they might, absolutely, and they might say this is a great opportunity. In other churches they might say no, but they talk about working collaboratively. So there's so many different parts of this, like moving parts, and if you get it all together, it's going to work really well. But if you're missing a part, it's going to struggle. It might not even work. It might keep going a bit, but there's so many parts to this to really make it work. It says there are 33 churches in the Londonderry and 24 parishes. So 33 churches and 24 parishes, 17 agreed to become part of it. But this is also one of the problems, is it says in total the 24 parishes serve an area with a population of 7,800 and 600 worshippers. So you've got 24 parishes of 7,800. In my parish, we got 2 churches, I think, if you include, no, just in my parish, one church, one parish, I think it's 6,300 with one church. So this is really, I guess, really rural, 7,800. The question is, do some of those churches viable? Do they need to become something else? And I know they do talk about turning them into festival churches, which means they only have 6 services a year and you can use the church building for something else. But how to keep those churches running as well? So it's not just paying for your stipendiary minister, but if you've got 17 parishes, paying for one person, it's not a huge cost between them all, but it's running those buildings as well. The gas, the electricity, the repairs, the insurance, paying for different things. The costs add up. So this is one to keep an eye on, and because this is very experimental. And I think I said earlier, it popped into my head, I was reading it from Bishop Martin, said, where is it? With a bold and audacious plan to work with God in growing the church. I don't know. I wonder, was there discernment in this? Was the prayer, was his a long period of seeking God and him speaking? Was this down to money, and this is what we have to do because we haven't got any money? And again, does the church need to change its structures to enable money to be released a bit more? The church commissioners, to be honest, they do give money away, but does more money need to be given away? Because the diocese, some dioceses are just really suffering. I think a lot of dioceses are going to be in trouble in a few years' time. So, and I'm just going to find one last quote. It's a long article, like I said. Go down below and click on the link to read it, because this really is one to keep an eye on, because over the coming years, will this work? If this works, this could be rolled out to other dioceses. But I'm just trying to find where someone said, at the Deanery Synod. Minutes from the Deanery Synod meeting last month indicate concern. One layman asked, does the Synod agree that it is both unacceptable and unsustainable to expect one minister to perform the combined roles of area dean, have responsibility of the oversight of worship in an entire Minster community, be leader of school worship and in the 4 local junior schools, and the only stipendiary vicar available to provide a visible presence to help promote growth of worship and thereby generous giving in 29 villages spread over a wide geographical area, all in the absence of the peer support essential to ensure good governance as well as provide protection from stress at work. And that's because this minister in this the minister in this community is also the area dean, and that's a lot of work in itself. So, and is it well, we'll keep our eye out, because this is just starting. Let's say the Canon Dalman told the meeting that the diocese had confirmed that clergy leaving or retiring would not be replaced unless parishes could pay for their stipend in full. So it's pay for what you get. It is that. Parish share in the Minster community currently pays for the stipend of the oversight minister and a deanery administrator. He agreed that the position of the oversight minister was not sustainable. It was to be revised with the diocese agreement. I think it might be that particular one. So at least they're saying it's not sustainable to be oversight minister and an area dean. So they're going to have to think how they do that. Like I say, a one to keep your eye on. So where are we now? We are lost in faith. 2 in 5 brought up as Christians have lost their faith. So recent findings from US Pew-based research centre come as weekly attendance at Church of England services continue to plummet. So what's interesting is this, and I included this because over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think we spoke about Gen Z, buying more Bibles, more interested in spirituality and Christianity, but also at the same time, so I heard also, let's not celebrate too much, because they're also just as interested in the occult as well. But they are asking more questions. But it says here, and this is interesting, 2 in 5 British people raised as Christians have lost their faith. So these, so you've got Gen Z, and we'll talk about those who weren't raised as Christians, really seeking faith, and then those who were brought up as Christians, 2 in 5 have are losing their faith. So there's about 58% of those who grew up attended church say they are now atheist, agnostic, or have converted to other faiths, while 57% of non-religious people brought up as Christians. While 57% of non-religious British people were brought up as Christians. Sorry, I read that wrong. The research found. The findings come as weekly attendance at Church of England services continues to decline from 1.6 million in the 1960s to 557,000 in 2023. It would be better if they used the figures from 2000, which I think around 2000 it's just under 1 million, which shows more stark reality. Is just under 1 million to 557,000 in 23 years. Andrew Cupson, the chief executive of the Humanists UK, says religious identity has been worn lightly in the UK for some time. Today's stats, like those of the census, show that a large population don't believe in gods today, feel much less tied to religious label of the family, school, community. And again, I agree, and I said before, the amount of people that click Christian on their census is not reflected to the amount of people who attend church, and so we always have to take that with a pinch of salt. But the question is, what's happening in our churches? If you've got people who are growing up and they're not necessarily saying what age this is, but if you've got people growing up in church and leaving, and that's naturally what will happen anyway, but you've got a younger generation who weren't brought up in church and then looking, there's a question for us to look at this data, and I'll look at this data after and get into the nitty gritty and try to understand, especially the ages, what we can do for those younger people who we are bringing up in that sense in the Christian faith in our church, to enable them to stay in the church. If we got 2 in 5, so say that's 4 in 10, 8 in 20, so we got well over 20 kids, but let's just say we got 20 that if I look at them today, that 8 of them won't be there in the future, and that should put a wake-up call for us. We definitely need to think, how are we teaching our kids, how we get them involved in church, being part of the church community, discipleship, reading their Bible, teaching them how to pray, fellowship with them as well, getting them involved in the life of the church, to enable them not to just to walk away. To think that if I had 20 kids at my church on Sunday, and that 8 of them in 10 years' time perhaps wouldn't be there, would be heartbreaking. We would have felt like we failed them. And I know some will go. I know that's just the reality, but 8 out of 20 would be a huge percentage. So stuff like this, and again, this is in Telegraph, but we again, with algorithms, always take it with a pinch of salt, but it's always going back to the data, isn't it? Looking at this research from the Pew Research Centre, and seeing what it really says and how it applies to us. So as we come in, as I always say, come into land, here's the history one. Stained glass mystery solved at Robert the Bruce's resting place. So experts have unravelled a mystery surrounding stained glass fragments which were anonymously returned at one of Scotland's most historic churches. The fragments were sent in a cardboard box in 2020 to the Abbey Church, which is part of the 950-year-old Dunfermline Abbey in Fife. The box was addressed to Bob Bruce, a name understood to be a playful reference to King Robert the Bruce, whose remains are interred in the church. Paris Minister Reverend Dr. Marianne Rennie was surprised when she opened the box and found stained glass wrapped in newspaper dated February 2005 with an anonymous note typewritten. And here's the glass fragments there, just 4 pieces. And it says, "Hello there, I'm returning this stained glass that I found over 20 years ago. It was in a small pile below the scaffold that was erected by the Abbey near Footpaths Faith in West. I wrapped it up in paper to protect it, but never had the chance to return it. Unsure if it was new glass or going in or old coming out. I feel a bit guilty taking it and hope it will get used. Regards, Cheaps." The find proved to be a real head scratcher, they said, and because it's impossible to identify which one of the 10 fully intact stained glass windows in the Abbey Church the priest originally belonged to. So they went on social media, they got lots of people involved, and they enlisted the assistance of Dr. Kennedy of the Institute of Sustainable Building Design at Harriet Watt University in Edinburgh, and they were joined by Vivian Kelly, a PhD student, supervised Dr. Kennedy. So they used science, history, and visual analysis, and they worked out that the 49 fragments. So there wasn't 4. They got these probably the nicer pieces. Were shards which are really part of Margaret window in the Abbey's south transept, dating from 1932 and designed by Alexander Strachan. It showed the marriage of Queen Margaret and King Canmore. So there goes me. I read the top of the I read the first few paragraphs of that, and I just thought they were old. Well, 1932, I thought they were medieval. That's me quickly adding that story. Well, there we go. It's not as exciting as you first thought, but there you go. That's my fault. Read the whole article, Dan. Read the whole article. Don't just get excited thinking it's like medieval stuff, because it said Robert the Bruce. I thought it was really old. Okay, my fault. I'll take that one. Right, as always, we come to pray and for these stories. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we do pray for our cathedrals to be free and our churches to be open for all those who come to visit. There's no hindrance into entering your house, Lord. And so please do make a way for that to happen. We do pray for Rev Dave and this church and the difficulties that they've had and they will face. May it not affect his ministry, Lord. And as we, as vicars, have to deal with these things, we don't come in to deal with these things. Please support and sustain all those involved as well. And may their ministry, as long as they're biblically faithful, be blessed. We pray for Diocese of Leicester in these difficulties and decisions. We do pray that they have been seeking your face and discerning this, Lord. And those churches now, especially as parishioners who feel that they haven't got a local vicar anymore, and how that works, and the difficulties they will face potentially. We do pray for them and keeping them in our prayers. And we thank you for that guy who returned the stained glass. And I do pray for myself that I would be a bit more excited about old glass, what I thought. So we pray all this in your holy name. Amen. So there we go. Another Rev Dan's Roundup where I plan to do less stories, which I do, and then to spend the same amount of time speaking about those stories. Because I made it now. The video's made with these overlays. Look, because I can just do this. I might not put them up at the right time, but there's no editing. That's it. I just drop them in, render the video and upload. That's it. A few minutes, it'd be up online. So it's all done. And I think the problem with that, because it's far quicker putting it on this little machine than editing it the way I did, and I can't believe that I didn't think about that before. But it seems like I just can't stop speaking, as my wife tells me. But so be it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the roundup, and I hope that Lent is still going well, and I will see you next week. Stay strong. Dan. Bye.